All right, what is up, everybody? This is Alex once again with another episode of the EOT Newsflash, episode 92. Standard is here, and as are my co-hosts who deserve all the introduction in the world. I've got this piercer spells beneath me. Stephen, how's it going tonight, man?
It's going well. Glad to be back.
Yep. And to my immediate that direction on the screen, we have the Buster of Sleeves himself. Shawn, you are here as well. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
Awesome. I like that we're not up your nose, like you said. New laptop, I think you said.
Yeah. Camera is at the base of the screen, so I had to figure out a way to plug in at F1.
We are nothing but on the cutting edge of technology here at the EOT Newsflash, bringing you the highest quality in Discord stream technology.
Whatever works, right?
Whatever works, right? Next week is probably gonna be like Google Hangouts or something like that. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But there is a lot to talk about tonight. We have week 1 of Standard on the books. The metagame is unlike what we thought it might have been, at least from my perspective. And we also have a little bit of Magic Fest debacle to cover as well. And I think that's where we want to start tonight. So I don't know how many people actually saw it out there on the internet, but I believe it was Monday this week, Twitter blew up when a picture from Magic Fest New Jersey, was it? Got posted online by the winner. And it was of the top 8 playing out at a table that was that didn't have like camera overage of it, so it wasn't for coverage. And then he posted the bigger bombshell, didn't get a trophy. And so I want to throw it to you guys first. Or there was he will get a trophy. It's coming in the mail. And the trophy they had on the table was for GP Vancouver, I think, as sort of like a placeholder of 2018. So like last year. So just insult to injury here. So
how would they have gotten that? Was that GP canceled or something? That's so weird.
Well, they went back in time. Obviously, they nexus of fate.
Oh yeah. They just warped on through and like, we're gonna take that.
Exactly. They stole from somebody else. Somebody find out who won that GP. And let's make sure they still have their trophy, because if not,
make sure.
Time travel has been confirmed, and we broke it here first. So
next you're gonna start telling me Bernstein Bears is spelled with an E.
Oh no, let's not go down that rabbit hole. That messed me up for a good week. Google it, kids. It's gonna blow your mind. Oh, only children who are like our age are gonna care, because
oh man, I got them going.
Are the Bernstein Bears even a thing anymore?
Thanks, Stephen.
I don't know.
anyway, so I know.
First of all, the coverage was actually Kevin Jones.
Kevin
he was the one
Jones.
posting everything.
Okay.
Yeah, and he was the one posting. He basically started off Sunday like tweeting like Kevin Jones coverage of the GP, and so he posted a lot of those pictures. He's the one that took picture of the GP winner afterwards, just standing over the side of the convention, because there was no top 8 photo. There weren't like winter interviews. No, there's nothing, right? And so if they're not sending out a camera crew, why would we send out a trophy?
Makes sense.
the coverage, they had announced some coverage information at the beginning of the year, but the way they really announced this and made a big deal of it, so I don't know if it was previously mentioned at the bottom of any other articles, but the way this became to light was somebody tweeted at Wizards and said, where's the GP coverage? I'd like to see some of the sealed GP coverage. And the way the Wizards announced is they responded to a tweet and said, for the time being, we are no longer going to have text, and something about at this point no longer having video coverage of GPs. And that's their response. Was just a response to a tweet.
Yeah.
They did say that they would have like deck list after top 8 and like minimal text coverage, which is just the player profiles. But I mean,
they said they were going to have that up by like Sunday night, and they didn't have it.
Yeah. So I know that you two guys, are much more, much higher on going to GPs than I've ever been. Obviously with the shift to being Magic Fests, as they're calling them now, being much more like a convention style event. How does just the lack of coverage really paint the picture for a Magic Fest for you guys going? And is it going to impact your interest in actually going to one of these moving forward?
For me, it's not a big factor in the most sense. I don't typically watch the coverage. Normally, if I'm not playing Magic on the weekend, I'm taking that weekend to do something else.
Sure.
And I don't really go back through and rewatch. I normally watch a streamer who has better breakdowns and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really don't mind a whole lot. The bigger issue with me isn't the lack of coverage; it's the indication of another step in this path that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the poor communication from Wizards in the sense that they had a YouTube video for the trailer for their $10 million Magic Arena announcement about like play Magic, see the world, get
The
known by
world
the
will
world.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, the world will know, and like I can't remember her name. She goes by Baytalk on Twitter, but she tweeted like a side by side picture of like what Wizards, like the old like posted a picture of the like what Magic wants you to see, and it's like a screenshot of that video.
Yes.
And then what Magic actually shows you, and it's like the really sad looking table where the two people are just playing their final game.
Yeah. Rachel Agnes is who you're referring to.
Rachel Agnes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I mean, for me, it's more than anything, it's just another sign because we're also at the end of January. The first Mythic Championships in February, I believe, and we have no information for how anybody that's not in the Magic Pro League can qualify. We should be already in the new PPTQ system. We've got nothing. It's the fact that people are upset about this GP coverage situation. They're upset because the cameraman who's taking pictures at every single Pro Tour since the beginning of Pro Tours was 2 weeks ago that his services are no longer needed and was sent away. We know their only message was we no longer need cameras in GP.
Where's mommy?
And so the fact that all those things happened and Wizards has been radio silent. They haven't responded to any of the questions, any of the concerns, any of the frustration, but they have still gotten the time to get up on Twitter and post, all the other stuff about this band making a D&D Magic album, and all this other stuff. So
there's a D&D Magic, like a record.
Yeah. There's some band that's kind of well known for like kind of more obscure like fantasy entertainment stuff, and like that's cool.
It's cool, but.
It's the fact that they're basically gutting everything from events, and then when we're like, but wait a minute, you just made a trailer that said that this is a big deal to you, and we're not hearing it. And then the players, if you're not the elite, like especially in today's like culture, right? If you're not the elite 1%, the 32 Magic Pro League players, you get nothing. You get no information. You might not ever be able to queue again. We don't know what that process is. Everybody might queue. Who knows? Like, and so it's that radio silence on it that's a bigger concern to me.
Yeah.
And I'd also like to go back to the coverage standpoint. Coverage is important for multiple like reasons. Just like even for me, like as I'm no one in the Magic community. I'm working on it and like trying, but like
everybody's somebody, Stephen.
I was able to acquire a sponsorship with one of my good friends named Morello Beefcake in his store, just because I would travel to the events and I would occasionally get on camera. Like that was enough exposure to like qualify for a sponsorship with him. Mm-hmm. And if you like don't even have that opportunity, if you just like take all of that away, like what are you actually trying to build towards? Yeah. Like if you can't get the players well known, then there's like you have nothing in my opinion. Like you just have a really fancy game.
Yeah, that's the thing is like so I'm not a big coverage person. It matters to some people. The coverage does matter as far as validating teams that are like this is our bread and butter. Mm-hmm. Like I've already seen a couple pro teams who are basically saying like we're really encouraging our players to join the Star City Games circuit.
Yeah. I mean,
you turn on
due to the lack of information, I have not scheduled to go to any GP this year. Like normally by now I'd start like looking at plane tickets. I've looked at SCG tickets. Like I don't think like Wizards is taking it seriously. And in all fairness, like the fact that we don't have an announcement, like I know someone's probably busting their butt trying to get this through, but it's like you keep doing this announcement of an announcement thing, which people don't like.
Which is Wizards like bread and butter, for honest.
Followed through on the announcement you said you were going to make, and your player base, at least on the competitive side of things, is very frustrated at this. Like, this should not be something you're just sitting on. Like you should have made your mind up by now, in my opinion.
I have to wonder, because they gave exclusive control over the GPs and now Magic Fest moving forward, which I don't know how long this contract's going to last, over to Channel Fireball. I think it was like the middle of last year, and that raised some eyebrows already because the price hike on GP entry fees immediately was apparent, and all different kinds of things. But I turn on most weekends I'll get on my computer and at least have it on in the background. I'll have Star City Games is open, on my screen at some point. And at any point you can look over and you'll see a player profile, even as outdated as some of them are, a recap of, or maybe like a replay of a stream they did earlier that week, or a deck tech, or a commercial for Dragon Shield Sleeves, or whoever it is, and then they actually get to their coverage, and it's better than anything that Wizards and Channel Fireball are doing together. And it just kind of blows my mind that Star City Games is just out there doing their own thing and, hand over fist just crushing it right now. And I think that Wizards really needs to be cognizant of that and kind of, use that as the benchmark and say, if we're going to do this, we need to do this at this level or better.
Right. And they don't want to lose, they don't want to have worse coverage and risk running have less viewership than Star City Games.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I 100%, I get that they're trying to cut costs, but like, you just made a $10 million prize purse, and you just paid 32 different people $75,000 a year.
Yeah.
Really, both of those things culminate into a very small percentage of your competitive players getting large amounts of that content and getting that commitment. So your competitive grinding group just isn't.
Yeah.
So like to Steven's point, like I've already started booking a lot of the stuff from Memphis. That was already kind of in the rolling.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of late for me to back out on that one. But moving forward the rest of the year, because I'm on the East Coast now, living in Orlando, and I have a little bit of travel leeway on week, I could see myself hitting multiple SCGs this year because they're all like fairly easy to get to, and the EV is higher. There's normally less players, decent money, a lot better coverage, and then they also like I don't know if you saw their Cardboard Live. They're like innovating a lot of stuff. They're working.
Oh yeah, that stuff's really cool.
If you watch it on, I think it's Twitch exclusively, you can go there and you can see the deck list. If you ever hover over one of the players, it'll pop it out of the side of the screen, and it's a really cool feature that I think is again the next level of showing off coverage for Magic, and And it's really interesting. Something I just kind of thought about was what is easier to show on a big giant screen on your computer, Magic Arena or live captured camera feeds. I'm not Illuminati over here, but just maybe that's kind of their idea, because they've already talked about how some of the Mythic Championships are going to be on Magic Arena. Is that correct?
Yes.
They've mentioned that that's their vision.
Yeah.
But it's Wizards. That's too far away for us to say that's actually happening.
And also, I think it'd be interesting too. There's like no tournament structure set up in Arena. Like, can the Arena servers even handle organizing that many people for one event without it crashing? Like, we saw problems with Magic Online, and that was like 5-6 years old whenever the whole Brian Kibler crash happened. Like, it's just, I don't know if they can get it together quickly enough in order to do that. I mean, maybe that's what they're focusing on right now. But
and if it does crash, I think they were giving away. I think they gave away all the people who were affected by the crash like promo scrublands on their MTGO accounts, and it was basically like the biggest slap in the face ever.
That is real unfortunate.
Yeah, I think you put a really good example of somebody who has kind of parlayed their, and this is a completely tangential here, who's really kind of parlayed their Magic success into Hearthstone success and just, beyond the game. Look at Brian Kibler. The man's just like, aside from being just a gorgeous specimen of a human being, he's just, he knows exactly what he needs to do to make sure that he is constantly in front of all of his fans doing everything that he can. Just...
he knows how to market himself very well.
And he's super nice too. I've met a few times.
Right on.
Let's not fanboy though. Let's talk about standard. Actually, last words on GP Magic Fest coverage. Last words. There are no words. There we go. Exacerbated gasps around the room. Nobody cares. All right, well, let's move on to something a little bit more exciting then, because we had our first week of live Paper Magic big standard tournaments in, I believe it was Indianapolis, was it?
Yeah.
Yes, Indianapolis. Star City Games put on their usual big magic wingding every weekend, like we already talked about. And the metagame is interesting. Moving into this weekend, from my perspective, I expected to see a lot of, Hydroid Crassus decks, mono red decks, a couple of gate decks. Obviously, Nexus of Fate was going to be a thing. I expected some number of Esper Control, and then to see the top 16 and beyond, and even the PPT or the PT. Oh no, the RPTQ, was it, Stephen? You like this too?
No, there's Magic Online.
There is, yeah. The metagame is surprisingly diverse for just a week one. Usually this is a time where just mono red and all the aggro decks just kind of storm the gates, but it's a mid-range brouhaha right now. So we've each picked a deck to talk about tonight, and we're basically going to focus on three aspects of it as it fits into the big metagame as a whole. So going to look at things from a metagame perspective. What is this deck's place in the metagame? What do we see as adaptions moving forward? What things are going to see added, taken out for week 2 and beyond? And then our third point of comparison is going to be, what are other decks going to do to react to this deck that we've chosen here? And Steven, I'm gonna go to you first, because your choice is a little bit unorthodox if people know you. A man who likes to take lots of turns and play counter spells. We're looking at mono red here. What's going on?
So the deck that I've selected to talk about is going to be mono red, but I would actually like to point out the reason I believe the metagame is so diverse and it's different than we've seen it before is because of Arena releasing Ravnica Allegiance on.
Yeah, that's a good point. A full week.
It's been you got a week and a half to test, and that. Most of the time, the people who will be doing the testing are going to be those who go out, proxy the cards, play with their friends in paper. But the fact that you had Arena and you had all the content developers on Twitch to watch, it's not that things got solved faster. It's that the answer to the week 1 aggro decks was a little bit more refined. So I think that's why you see this.
Yeah, excellent point.
I think the fact that the day before it released for public, they had all the content streamers going through and streaming non-sealed, they're streaming constructed decks.
Yep.
You got to see just a lot of really good decks. So a lot of the decks that were doing well, people were playing on that day. Pros were playing that day.
Yeah.
And really what it is, most Magic is typically a cycle. And so normally we start the beginning of the cycle is aggro. Well, the cycle started a week or two earlier online. So by now we should be shifting to the second or third point of that cycle. So we should be in the mid-range to control portion of the cycle.
And so we see the adaptation happen again, and it goes back to aggro decks again.
That wheel just started spinning a little early.
Okay, that's a really interesting perspective. I didn't really thought about that. Up on the screen I have Caleb Schur's 10th place deck from Minneapolis this weekend. It's 20 mountains and a bunch of burn spells. Steven, what is it about decks like this that just kind of work?
Well, the nice thing about this deck is you're attacking your opponent and you're doing the same thing throughout multiple cards, and that's dealing 3 damage or dealing 4 damage and drawing some cards in regards to risk factor. And you also have the added redundancy of light up the stage, which also draws you cards. So you have a lot of the same cards doing the same thing, and it's very good at doing what it does. All the 1-drops, having a low curve is nice. You get to lower your land count to play more of the impactful spells. That's where mono red shines. There are even some lists that'll go down to 17 lands and play Flame of Kel, and it just the flavor varies depending on what part of the circle we're in on Magic Arena for the day. And it's interesting because I don't know if y'all had the chance to play Magic Arena on the weekend, but you can actually see the cycle change from the morning to the evening. So
that's gotta be super weird. It's like the tide.
Yeah, in a way. I mean, it's also the different sets of people who can get on. They might have different play styles and stuff too. So there's a bunch of factors that go into it, but it is pretty neat. Yeah, but going down and breaking down the deck some more, you have pretty much as many 4s as you can fit in the list. Fanatical Firebrand, a great, efficient, hasty threat that can turn into a ping source for Spectacle whenever your opponent has some blockers.
Yep.
E2 Lava Runner, powered up by your spells, and it's going to be another haste threat which comes out quickly. Goblin Chainwhirler, just a really efficient creature that we're all familiar with. And then Viashino Pyromancer, standard red cards, and then all your variations on bulk.
Yeah, lightning strike, risk factor, shock, lightning. It's all just.
Yeah, but
it's a little gross.
I guess I should clarify. The main reason that this deck has piqued my interest is it's actually like you have a lot of different decisions to make that are very critical. So, like, do you go ahead and use your light up the stage before your skewer the critic, or vice versa, based on certain board states?
Sure.
And to me, Magic is a puzzle, and this deck presents a lot of pieces, but you have a shorter time frame to connect them, and it's just like really intricate, and I've been really enjoying it. I haven't been playing straight mono red, I've been playing black as well for Theater of Horror, and that adds a whole nother level as far as how important triggering Spectacle is potentially before combat in order to get your lava runners, and there are just a lot of factors that make it really entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving forward, do you see this deck sort of, kind of starting to mutate into something else, like taking on those black cards, or does the mono red shell kind of hold together and is just a good like level 1 deck week over week moving forward?
Yeah, I think you could definitely see a shift towards black, especially because Hydrocrisis can be a problem for this deck, and you can swap over to black and gain cast down, and it's just like one of the most efficient answers to the card. Now that being said, cast down isn't too good against the other problematic cards for the deck like Lyra and Shalai, but that's where your Lava Coils and Fight with Fire is supposed to come in.
Yeah, definitely. And then just kind of in reaction to this deck, what can people, if they're gunning for mono red this weekend, or on Magic Arena, what are the cards? You already mentioned Shalai and Lyra. What are some other cards that really are going to brick wall this deck from being as effective as it can be?
So the most important thing is going to be holding your Wild Growth Walker and Branch Walkers until turn 4, so you can play them back to back. You don't really want to run out a Wild Growth Walker on turn 2, just because the likelihood of your opponent having a Bolt effect is going to be pretty high. Now, that being said, if, let's say, you have Wild Growth Walker, Jadelight Ranger, and you don't have the Branch Walker, then going 2-3 might be an acceptable risk for you if you think you're not going to survive till turn 5 or something like that. So I would start by playing some base green deck, and then probably adding Hydrocrisis, and then there are a lot of good black cards, which leads you into the Sultai variations that we see in the CG lists.
I've felt like against the mono red list, the Explore package is your best bet, but I think the best supplement to it isn't even Crisis, because he gains life in such a small increment. But the Bant lists, I think, are stronger against red than the Sultai lists. They're just weaker against like controls and stuff. And so you end up going Explore package plus Shalai plus Lyra. And some of them will run like Tristani, so you get to put two lifelinkers into play and stuff.
Yep.
And so I think that deck, if you're really wanting to gun for mono red, you go Bant. But if you're wanting to stay open for a more open field of Nexuses and controls, then yeah, the Sultai is a better path.
Yeah, definitely. And let's talk about Sultai. That's the deck that you want to talk about here, Shawn. So this is the first place deck from Indianapolis this weekend. This is in the hands of Anthony Tavarti. Sultai mid-range. What is it about this deck? Like it reminds me of like Jund from Return to Ravnica standard. So what is the appeal of this deck that just makes it, that earned it that first place trophy this weekend?
So his list, and then I'm actually a little bit bigger of a fan of the 8th and 11th place list. They're both identical, but they're almost the same to this list as well. 2 Carnage Tyrants, 3 Hydrocrisis. The biggest thing is it's the Golgari deck that we had pre Allegiances, which was just a consistent engine. Yeah. And they replaced their Find Broker loops with blue to get like Hydrocrisis. It opens up the option of negates and disdainful strokes out of the board for your control matchups, which is really important.
Yeah.
And the big trump, and the reason I like the 8th and 11th place list is because I really like Hostage Taker.
That was one I was surprised wasn't in the first place list, but I've got the 8th place list for Abe Corrigan on the screen now.
Yeah. And the big thing with that card is what makes it really good is the number of Hydrocrisis rolling around the formats. I've seen some people go back and forth on whether or not there should be 4 Crisis. I think there should be 4 Crisis, so I would want to lose one of these other cards for another Hydrocrisis. It's less good because this list only runs the 1 Incubation Druid, where some lists will still run the 4, but it has a lot more interaction. a lot more spells, and a lot of ways to like kind of break board stalls. Because the list I've been streaming online, it cut a lot of these spells, and it was just a bunch of dudes, and it like didn't run chupacabras, it just ran hostage takers. And so the issue you're running into is that like you have board stalls, and you'd have to kind of find a way to break those board stalls. But by having trophies, cast downs, contempts, chupacabras, a hostage taker, like you have better ways to break those stalls. But the deck has just got a lot of consistent plays, and Hydroid Crassus in a deck where you're designed to grind out just slowly becomes more and more dangerous.
Yeah.
So like you're gonna play their first Hydroid Crassus for like 4, you're gonna gain 2 Jaw 2 and have a 4/4 flyer, and that's really good. And then by the time you normally you can only take a certain number of turns off advancing your board state, and a lot of your turns are like making sure your opponents aren't doing anything, and you're playing this slow kind of tempo-y game. And so then you start to cast 1 for 6, and then you cast 1 for 8, and then eventually you cast 1 for 12.
Yeah.
And so like the big problem in the mirror match is Vivian Reed is just insane because she's able to shoot Hydra Crassus down. But the reason I like Hostage Taker is because I can take your Crassus, and if you kill my Hostage Taker, it's a no risk play because it comes back and dies. That's a 0/0. But if you don't kill my Hostage Taker, then I get to cast your Crassus. So even if I turn 4 Hostage Taker,
forgot that's what it does. Jeez.
Yeah. So even if I take your hostage, if I hostage take your dude, if you don't kill it and I untap, even if I only cast it for X is 2 or X is 3, that's fine because it wasn't my Hydroid Crassus, and now I get to gain a life, draw a card, and I get this flyer, and my hostage taker not only removed the thing that you spent an entire turn doing, but also advanced me. So hostage taker has been bad previously because when people were playing like Lyra's Premier Threats, you don't want to hostage taker that because then it dies and then they get Lyra back. But against Hydra Crassus meta, 1 or 2 hostage takers is nuts.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing that really kind of like strikes me is just like how little blue there actually is going into these decks. Do we try to, moving forward, maintain that core of just the green-black and splash with just these handful of cards like Crassus and Taker and a couple of negates on the sideboard, or do we try to go, real wide with it and maybe find some more impactful blue cards as well?
So there's like an Esper mid-range deck, and that one will go a little bit more blue, and it's like pretty evenly blue, black, white, and the mana base is a lot of dual lands.
Yep.
But I think the reason this build is correct for if you want to play Sultai is the blue is only your splash, because really the only card you want early is out of your sideboard, out of your interactions with negates and stuff. But you're not really playing Hydra Crassus and Hostage Taker till later in the game, so you don't need a ton of blue sources. So this allows us to run more basics to get value off Settle the Wreckage and our opposing Assassin's Trophies. Whereas the Esper midrange deck, it only ran like 1 swamp. So if your opponent, if you play that swamp and your opponent settles you or Assassin's Trophies you, you don't get anything back. So this list gets to run a little bit better mana. Also because you're on this, Explore package and things like that, you're running less shocks. So you only have, we got 4, 8, 11 shocks in the list. Whereas other lists will need to run full 12 or more. So you can shave a shock, and really the biggest part is just that you don't need the blue early. There's not really much that this deck gains from it. Whereas other decks want Thief of Sanity, this deck doesn't want Thief of Sanity. It wants to have a slow drawn out game and then slam a threat that the opponent can't deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if go ahead, Stephen.
I would like to point out, I think that this deck, now that I think it's going to be like one of the prominent forces in the metagame, I believe it's going to end up dropping the Carnage Tyrants for Hadana's Climbs, just because of how critical that is in breaking open the mirror. Like, if you're able to play a Krasis, it doesn't matter what size it is, it's going to be able to turn on your Hadana's Climb, and that ability on the land at instant speed is just so crucial to punching through combat damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was playing the Hadana's Climb version a lot this last week, and it's good. The problem is you have to put in kind of a deck like this where it's a splash effect.
Yep.
But if you play it, then now your incubation druids get better. So if you start running Hadana's Climbs, you have to really reconfigure a lot of your list, because to leverage that Hadana's Climb, you want to play more incubation druids,
which is also going to incentivize you to play Zagana as well.
Playing Zagana, yeah, definitely. And it's really interesting, Stephen, you guys mentioned, cutting Carnage Tyrant, and there was an article actually on Star City Games today that talked about the Sultai midrange mirror, and it talked about Carnage Tyrant being the trump in that.
The old Golgari mirrors, that's how it was.
Yeah, but since we're blue now as well, so that you're saying that changes the context of the matchup and makes Carnage Tyrant less impactful then?
No. So the thing is, like in the mirror match, you still want your Carnage Tyrant because there's still games where your Carnage Tyrant just wins the game.
Oh, sure.
And
yeah.
it goes so well with the Dawn's Climb because the Dawn's Climb gives flying, but it doesn't give trample. So you want Crassus and Carnage Tyrant. 'Cause when you do fly, if they play a Crassus, you want to make sure they can't just like chump block because you're giving this thing trample. So I think attacks for 14 trample flying damage. And so like what it is that you don't cut Tyrant out of the deck, you cut him into the board.
Okay, sure.
Because you don't particularly want him in your game ones against Burn anymore. He used to, Golgari would bring it in as a faster clock.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's the case anymore because the Burn deck got faster with more Burn spells, and is less reliant on dudes. So I don't necessarily want. I would rather have Crassus fill that role than bringing in extra Carnage Tyrants. Like I think Crassus are my big threat against Red, but I still want Tyrants. Like I don't want to completely forego them.
Sure.
But it's just a matter of if you have to have another trump, so you can't just be Crassus because in mirror matches that's not good enough. If they have more mana than you don't have a trump anymore.
Yeah. So to put this deck in your crosshairs for this weekend on Arena, in person, what does a player need to do to beat Sultai midrange other than play Sultai midrange?
I think the control decks have okay game. That's the problem. Is it's just like jump. Like the control decks have some okay options. The red decks can be faster. It's really going to be about the hands you keep, and the way you play the game. And that is that the longer the game goes, its win percentage goes up in most matchups because it's a 50% deck against everybody, right?
Yeah.
So if you treat every turn as a win-loss turn, if you're 50% to win every turn, the more turns you play, you're going to rack up wins, and those percentages shift as the game goes long. Whereas against control decks, you want it to go a little bit longer, but then you still have to have answers for Carnage Tyrant and that card advantage and stuff. So it's kind of a weird deck. Like there's not really a best plan. You gotta figure out when you need to go for it.
Yeah.
Because if you wait too long, they'll generate card advantage. You'll get drowned. So when are you going to go for your win, or when do you need to, like, if you're the burn player, when do I need to direct my spells and a couple of these threats to give myself options? Or when is it, if I kill this threat, I'm on a 3-turn clock, it doesn't matter. If I kill this threat, they have so many cards in hand, I'm still staying on this clock, so I need to just go for them. So it's going to be all about practicing in that matchup real hard.
Yeah, definitely. And it really is interesting to see, a card like Hydroid Crassus, which just seems to be sort of the darling of Standard right now. This is, the effect that it's most comparable to is Sphinx's Revelation from original Return of Ravnica block Standard, which was everywhere in all the Jeskai, the Blue-White, and the Esper to control decks. And to see that card, which was basically you cast the first one to sort of get yourself back in the game, cast the second one to turn the corner, and the third one to win the game, because it constantly draws you to the next one. To see that card kind of shift into this mid-range shell and turn into this creatured version of it, it's a little disheartening for me at least, but because I love Sphinx Revelation, but that's the way the world works, I guess.
It's okay. You have Explosion. It's arguably better.
That's actually a really good point, and I do love that card. And we're working on it in Modern. We're working on it. We're working on it. So we've been talking a little bit about control, and obviously that's sort of the third aspect of the wheel here. We have mono red aggro, we have the mid range decks, and the control deck that really kind of launched itself into sort of the spotlight this weekend was Esper Control. Everybody seemed to be super high on Esper going into this weekend, especially with the printing of Kaya's Wrath, sort of returning to that 4-mana Wrath space. So that's the deck that I want to put some focus on here. Very much like Jeskai Control, with sort of those big Izzet Drake decks that were running a rampant previous to Allegiance dropping. And my original thought was that this deck couldn't be as good as the Blue Red and the Jeskai versions because Niv-Mizzet is just the stone cold truth. The card is practically unbeatable. But it turns out when you replace all of the red cards from Jeskai into Esper and replace your big threat with Chromium, which is, I think, in some cases better than Niv-Mizzet, you actually have a much more powerful... I see that face, Sean. I see that face.
There's no case that card's better than Niv-Mizzet.
I mean, it has the word flash on it, and that's what makes a difference to me.
It's the third best control creature. It's Niv-Mizzet.
Okay.
It's Nezahal, and then it's Chromium.
Okay, at least it's in the top three. But
yeah, Nezahal is still in this standard.
Right? But we've got a deck that I think just performs better on every other axis than Jeskai, because with Jeskai you're relying on 5-mana Rask, Cleansing Nova. You're relying on Deafening Clarion as sort of your super of choice. But here we just get to jam the Kaya's Wrath. We get Raska's Contempt, Moment of Craving to sort of slow down the aggressive red decks, and then Absorb has been a huge piece of that. Being able to gain back all that incidental damage of burn spells and shocklands and things like that. So to see a control deck like this, even though we had a week and a half of the cycle already kind of moving into from Arena, seeing a deck like this be as successful as it was just kind of shows me that, one, Teferi is broken and will never go away. But two, we getting to add Godless Shrine and Hollow Fountain to the format just opened up controls options infinitely here. So this is a deck. If I was going to play Standard, tomorrow, this is my open of choice right here, I think.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one, and like you mentioned, Kaya's Wrath is a big boost to this. I know a lot of people were hesitant on slotting Kaya's Wrath into this just because of the mana requirement, but I think also a lot of people are forgetting the standards we had with RTR and Cons, where it's just like we have perfect mana. And that's pretty much like where we're at with the check lands and shock lands.
Yeah, the only downside to this deck's mana base is the Singleton Island, which just seems so weird to me. Because mostly I want to have, upwards of like 3 or 4 islands in a control deck, but to see it here is just kind of funny because we do have to support Kaya's Wrath in this deck. Castable on turn 4.
I apologize, I misspoke. It was Cons and Battle for Zendikar.
Oh, there we go.
That was where we had the better mana.
An absolute miserable time of Standard Hippos has by all. But yeah, just having the flexibility, and this deck kind of can go in sort of like kind of a mid-rangey kind of way with Thief of Sanity, which I forgot that it actually takes 3 cards and puts 2 in the bin, and it's like the card is just unreal, and it just has so many of the options. The tools we need to kind of play a long game. Precognitive Perception is really powerful, and seeing Mortify being sort of a big player in this deck because everyone thought that Reclamation, or what's the green enchantment? Reclamation.
Wilderness Reclamation.
Yeah, Wilderness Reclamation was sort of like this big boogeyman of it, and Esper shows up and is like, nope, we got this, guys. It's fine. We'll handle this.
Yeah.
My
big shock was that they had these absorbs instead of Sinister Sabotages because I still like Sabotage better. But it's because they have Shocklands and because Burn is such a big player.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting noticing that they have the Chromium in the main. Normally these kind of control decks would just sideboard their threat. But because Sultai list generates so much card advantage, they have to have a way to close the door in the main deck because there's very real possibilities that eventually they'll start casting more cards than you're drawing. Yeah. And you can't keep up with 1-for-1s at that rate.
Yeah, and the fact that Crassus draws the cards on the cast, not the ATB, just the card's so good, so damn good. It just kind of blows my mind how good that card is. But yeah, to belabor the point again, I think this is one of the best week 1 control decks that I've ever seen, or week 1.5, I guess you could call it, that I've ever seen. Usually it takes a good 2 or 3 weeks to see a deck like this emerge and kind of be a force in the metagame like we've seen it here. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you guys had to sort of put this in your crosshairs for this weekend, what are the tools that you would bring to the table to fight against the third best control finisher in Standard?
It would depend on what you think the metagame is. The red deck is always a good path. Normally those are pretty tough matchups for control.
Sure.
White weenie lists are okay, but Kaya's Wrath makes it a lot worse. For me, I think it would be dependent on what the rest of the format is. If I think red is still a player and I expect to see multiple matchups of red, then I probably run the red deck. Or I run a more card advantaged shell of Sultai, right? Make sure I have the 4th Crassus in the deck or something like that.
Sure.
But if I'm expecting red to not be a big player because it didn't have great results, and I think the deck is really good. I think it's one of the best. I think currently red is one of the best decks we've had in a long time for red.
Yeah.
It's just that there's a lot of the Wild Growth Walker package is really strong. So I think if red's, I think a Grixis list is actually really well positioned because they get solid answers for the Sultai matchup, but then having Thought Erasure helps your control matchup a lot.
Yeah.
And so I think if you get the option to go into Grixis and you have Nicobolus the Ravager and you have Thought Erasure and you have Eldest Reborn And then you get to board in duresses. Like, you can really aggressively attack that metagame. The problem is there's just no life gain. So
Yeah,
I don't
and
know how
there's no looking sweeper there either, because there was a Grixis deck that I saw in the, let's see if I can find it real quick here. Yeah, 15
The only
plays here.
sweeper you have access to is a Cry of Carnarium.
Yeah.
No, you have more. You have ritual suit.
Oh, right, yeah, the
that's
4-mana destroy all CMC less than 3.
That's true, yeah. But
That
we
also
also
hits
got
Hydrocrisis, by the way.
Huh?
That also hits Hydrocrisis. Yeah.
Because
That
Tyrant's
does.
down in popularity, and then you just board 1 or 2 Starve Extinctions, and you bring those in for the Sultai matchups.
Oh,
Yeah,
So, like,
good.
there's a lot of ways to beat that. The only thing that you really struggle to beat is you have to, like, max your Spell Pierces and your Duresses out of the board for the red matchup, because you have no life gain in the main deck. Because
well, you have a Moment of Craving is the one spell here in this Grixis deck.
Yeah, you have that in Vraska's Contempt, but like that's not enough.
No, definitely not.
you will get ran over.
Yeah.
Stephen
Electrostatic Field says nothing.
Yeah, that card is real. That card is real.
So, but I mean, I think the Grixis deck is probably like a pretty decent call.
Yeah.
If you're expecting red to be a little bit less popular, and then just if you face red, you just have to like bring in your duresses, sideboard properly, mulligan aggressively, and just really try to put a clock on them with the Ravager as fast as possible. But yeah, if I was going to play, and I did not think red's a factor, I think that's the deck I'd go with, because Thought Erasure plus duress plus negate's really strong.
Yeah.
Now, do you think if Grixis was to adapt maybe like Carnival Carnage against red, like just being able to use the blinding effect to apply pressure and then also get rid of some of the burn spells, do you think that would be an adequate adaptation?
That's the one that pings the player and the creature?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's deal 1 to the player and then its controller and then lightning.
Yeah, the 4 mana Blightning, yeah.
Is the 1 mana ping, that's an instant, right?
Yeah,
It is, yeah.
I kind of like that card out of the board.
Yeah.
Because like you get to shoot and Vishano Pyromancers. And so the big thing is, like, if they go turn 2 Vishano Pyromancer, you want to kill it right away. If they didn't have a turn 1 get 2 Lava Runner, because you really want to make sure those Wizards Lightning stay 3 mana for as long as possible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, and then also, like, taking away that attacker, because this deck's these control decks and these Esper, the Grixis and Esper decks, they really need to prioritize not giving free spectacle triggers.
Yeah.
So if they can keep creatures from hitting them, that's a pretty good step.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could definitely see that card being like a 1 or a 2 in the list. Could see it being in the main deck, because like the back half is good against control, the front half is good against the aggro decks if they're on the X1s. Like the white weenie decks, that card's great.
Yeah. I mean, like a
I
Grixis
do have
mid-range deck
to-
almost.
I do have to disagree with Shawn here. You really should hold your removal spell till the end of the turn to make sure that they don't play a more valuable creature.
What?
I'm trying to trigger spectacle. I'm playing the long game.
Oh, shut up. Oh, and the other upside is that, like, if you're on Grixis, you get to have Angrath out of the board. And
Engrath is real. Engrath
because
is real,
he takes Hydra
He takes
Grasses,
freezes,
you hit them, and then it sacks Grasses.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Because
good.
CMC's too. CMC's too. Yeah, it's great.
Okay, there's your tech, guys. So,
You bring him and he gets against any of your Sultai and Esper matchups, and you leave him out against aggressive decks. And Cry Carnarium is really solid versus the White Weenie decks, and I don't think you bring in Cry versus Burn decks, personally.
no, I don't think
Yeah,
it's impactful enough.
Not quite as
Yeah,
useless.
most of the creatures they play that you can, your kill spells will 1-for-1 those creatures, because it doesn't kill Chain Whirl anyway. So you just 1-for-1 those creatures and try to put a threat in play.
Yeah. So it really just kind of seemed like, and now we're kind of like talking about Grixis control a bit more here. I'm looking at it, I've got it on the screen again, and I'm looking at Ritual of Soot, which is, obviously the super it has access to. This almost feels like this could be just like its main deck sweeper, because we look at a lot of the threats that are coming out of a lot of these other decks. So I'm looking at like Mono Red Aggro wipes the board completely. Against Sultai mid range, the only cards it can't destroy are Carnage Tyrants and Ravenous Chupacabra, which basically have 0 targets as it is. They're basically just 4-mana 2/2s. So like, I'm inclined to agree with you guys. Saying Grixis control is like a really viable option. Moving
Yeah, I
forward.
would put like 1 Soot in the main and 1 in the board, and then you have Chemister's Insights in the deck. And so if you're playing this control deck, you have a discard outlet, and you get to still go get the, you discard the Ritual Soot to Chemister's Insight later.
Yeah, and yet, like, you almost kind of like go for like this kind of weird sort of like bird playing, because you have 2 lightning strikes in the main board. You've got ionizes. Like, and then you've got Expansion Explosion to kind of finish things off, along with, and then you've got Elvis Reborn as sort of like your kind of trump against everything else. And yeah, plus Niv Mizzet, like there's a shell here I think that definitely has some exploration to it. I might play this actually. We'll talk about that another week because that card is goofy as all get out too. But yeah.
If you really think Red's gone, then you just play Grixis and you just add some blue-green shocks and some blue-green dual lands, and you run Crassus still.
Like, yeah, it turns into Mardu Green.
Oh, great.
No, it turns into Grixis Green, bro.
No, I'm talking about the Mardu Green decks of old. Like, you just as greedy as possible.
If we think the red decks are pushed really far down, then there's not really a big punishment because you have good sweepers for the white weenie deck, and that's the only other deck that can punish you.
Yeah.
So because you have these sweepers for the white weenie deck, then like you get to run Crassus, and now you have Crassus for the control decks, right? So you could turn one of your colors into a splash fairly easily.
Yeah.
And just really go after people.
Yeah, maybe there's like room for like what's the 3-mana artifact that lets you tap for any color of mana from your lands?
Chromatic Lantern.
Yeah, a little Chromatic Lantern action there.
Possibly.
Yeah, or maybe like having like the lands in the sideboard, and then boarding in lands and cutting things. I don't. Yeah, there's some creativity there for sure.
Transformative.
No.
Or do we play
so many sideboard lands?
Do we play the Lockets? Is it time for Lockets in Standard?
No.
Oh, come on.
Play Chromatic. Just play 4 Chromatic Lantern if you really want that effect. You're fine. I mean, the fact that the previous 3-mana artifacts and RTR didn't get played should be a pretty big indicator.
Oh, the key runes? Yeah. Well, I mean, they got played in Jund a little bit. Rakdos key rune was actually a thing.
Okay.
I'm just saying, a 3/1 first striker for 3 mana, or no, 2 mana was nothing to scoff at. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. So I do want to throw one more little piece at you guys before we kind of wrap up for the night. So I heard I was reading an article today, and they were talking about how Siege Rhino has returned to Standard. Would you guys like to? Haunt? Yes, the Bell Haunt out of the this Esper midrange deck here.
Sorry, Shawn. Took your chance to guess. My apologies.
So I figured that was it.
Yeah. So like, and we already talked about this. We talked about this like a little bit already. It's basically just a bunch of dudes in an Esper shell with some disruption there, and then we have the Seed Rhino Standard. And this is a pretty cool deck, and it kind of highlights a lot of things we were talking about already. Hostage Taker being a good foil to Crassus. Thief of Sanities, a really powerful, engine to get going. And then we have Dovin Grand Arbiter here as well, which I saw you play against on stream the other night, Shawn, and you let that thing ultimate 3 times.
I wasn't playing the deck that could attack it.
I'm not saying that was a bad idea, but
I didn't have a choice. I was just like,
you could have swept the board.
Oh yeah, I didn't let it go. Just go for a while.
I mean, it was cool. It was cool to see the animation, so I appreciate getting to see that. But yeah.
Oh, did they animate all the ults? I haven't.
Oh yeah, they animate everything.
Oh, that's cool.
The big thing is like that matchup was like that deck, that blue-white aggro deck. It's just Dovins and creatures. So if they ultimate him, it's not like they're gonna find anything that changes my wrath being effective. So I was like,
yeah, they just have more creatures. Yeah, but it kind of goes back to like just I like planeswalkers that get to do different things here, and this is one that really kind of highlights that. And so I don't know, it's an interesting deck. I think it's pretty cool as well.
Yeah. I've played it a fair amount. Hero Precinct 1, 6 is pretty awesome in it, and it does a lot of good interaction. You have Hush Taker and Deputy of Acquisitions, and that card's really good. And the mana base is just a lot of dual lands, so I've gotten blown out by a few Assassin's trophies.
Oof, yeah. But yeah, you take the good with the bad though, so. It happens.
Yeah, it's good.
So that kind of puts a cap on week 1 of Standard. So we've already kind of talked about there's this Grixis shell that has yet to be explored. And obviously Golgari midrange splashing Crassus is definitely gonna be a thing moving forward. If you guys had to make a choice right here, right now, you're gonna go play in a Standard tournament as soon as we break for that evening. What are you sleeving up to do battle in Standard with?
Burn. It draws cards more efficiently than other decks and kills the opponent quickly.
Okay, he's not wrong. He's not wrong.
I don't actually know. That's the problem. I have a tournament I need to prepare for. Like I think
we
the best
can't.
deck
We can't
is-
give away. We can't give it away.
No, well, I don't care. I
The
think
tournament's
the
the
best deck is-
LCQ BTW.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's. I don't know. I think Sultai is the best deck, but I hate playing those decks. I've taken green black X decks to like 4 RPTQs, and they're always awful because you're always just a fair matchup and just falling a little bit shy. Like I can't stand fair decks. So
Tell us
play
more
this
about those fair decks,
You
Shawn.
gonna come join the dark side over here?
so that's one of my favorite decks, but I've actually gotten tons of reps in on just the various Nexus Fate decks, and I think a lot of it's bad play and bad results this weekend. Some of it came from I don't think a ton of people were on it, and I think part of that is arena psych out. People were
Sure.
having trouble controlling their turns and getting done and getting roped out and all that stuff. But then I think another part of it is just that it's a complicated deck.
Yeah.
I also
So
think that a lot of the initial lists weren't quite as tuned.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely not.
I actually have really loved the Gate version.
Yeah, I think the Gates is about as good as they're gonna be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the guild gates, the guild summit is just like 3 mana, draw 5, and like
Yeah.
you resolve that and it just goes nuts. The
Yeah,
problem is Wilderness Reclamation gets really aggressively attached.
Yeah,
attacked.
and then the Angel, no less. You know, the one that gains you 2 life for every gate you control. Like that's lights out against most mono red aggro decks. I would imagine if it comes down fast enough. You know, with
Yeah.
Growth
Well, the
Spiral.
fastest you can take it down is turn 4, but like it's awkward because that means that you had to have an untapped land turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4 in order to do it. So
Oh, sure,
you're not
sure.
really getting the most out of the gates.
Yeah,
So
you're getting
ideally,
more
it's
life. Oh,
turn
that's fair,
5
yeah.
after you do a circuitous rouse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Really, what it is, you have Gift of Paradise and you have
Yeah.
Close the Gateway,
yeah.
and so you have 4 mana or 8 cards that are mana sources that gain 3 life when they come into play.
Yeah.
And so that's really, really big. And then Growth Spiral allows you to have these turns a lot faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think what we're going to do probably for next week, in addition to kind of like recapping more standard and how it's going to evolve, though, I really like to like break down, Nexus of Fate and what it's kind of done to Magic in general, because there's this kind of growing contingent that it's not exactly the best thing for it, especially within the context of Arena, and that kind of really opens the picture up to what Arena has done for Magic. So there's a lot of discussion to have for that, and I think we're going to do that for next week. But I know there's been some strong opinions. We had a good chat going this morning in the old Facebook group there. So get ready for that next week.
And probably a nice looking blue-green Marlins for Nexus. So I'm pumped. Get your savor the moments now, folks.
If there's one thing that we also spend a lot of time doing in that ridiculous chat room of ours, it's brewing up potentially very bad decks.
Not
I
potentially.
have no idea what you're talking about.
Brewing up very bad decks that potentially can win 1 or 2 games.
But that 1 or 2 games.
Hey, it's all about the story, right? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Alex knows. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't build 4-color Bring to Light Scapeshift to win tournaments. I wanted to tell stories to people.
Actually, I built 4-color Bring to Light Scapeshift with 64 cards in the deck to win games, and I did very well with it.
64?
I did. I spent like 4 hours doing the math and like calculated to where I was like, all right, so I have the right lane ratio
Oh,
to be able to run all
God.
these spells. To be able, it was real absurd because I was playing more Scapeshifts. So I was like, I don't need to be as skinny of a deck, and like it was weird, but it actually worked.
Okay,
really well.
okay. I mean, I love
It
the
was-
deck. I got more heads turned when it looked like a Grixis control deck in my early turns, and then I played my first breeding pool, and everyone's like, what is going on? Like, don't worry about it,
When
guys. Don't worry about
My
it.
Eldrazi opponent attacked, and I go Quicken, Bring to Light, Supreme Verdict. They were like, what? I was like, yeah, it's great.
Oh man, yeah. So that they're good stories. I mean, we should just start telling. We could probably spend an entire evening telling really bad Magic stories, and we probably will at some point. Go back and listen to all the episodes, and you'll find dozens of them. I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I think that about wraps it up for tonight. So big thank you as always to Shawn and Stephen for hanging out with me tonight, talking about Magic cards, giving us their insight into standard and how we see things evolving in the next couple of weeks. GPs look to be sort of a thing of the past.
Magic Fest.
Magic Fest. Sorry. Magic Fest. Definitely. You know how that's going to evolve. It's like a weekly story. Like every week there's going to be one of these darn things, and every week there's going to be some sort of disaster at one of them. So the nice thing about Magic is that it's always happening and giving us stuff to talk about. What'd you say?
I said as long as they are abbreviated MF, there's going to be problems.
Oh yeah. So as always, I will throw the last words to Stephen. Oh wait, hold on. We can't say it yet. We have to do the bad. We have to say the bad words to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.
Oh, that's just the marketing and promotional stuff.
That's
to be expected at this point.
I know, but I hate acting like that. I'm not like a YouTube influencer. That's not my job. It's really not my job. But of course, I'm actually going to be streaming tomorrow night. I'll be doing some best of one, maybe best of three Allegiance drafts. So check it out over on Twitch/EOT Newsflash. I know, Shawn, we can find you on Twitch/Busted Sleeves. Is that correct? Yep.
Twitch, Busted Sleeves.
Cool. And then Stephen, you are at Spellpierce, correct?
Yeah, Spellpierce. Cool. So, yeah, I'll be streaming tomorrow. Shawn, I know you've been doing some, sporadic streaming here and there.
I'm stepping it back up, so I'll be on most Mondays. After we get done with this, I'm going to get on some most Mondays, Wednesdays, and then it's going to shift again in a few weeks to Thursdays, and then weekends.
Cool. Right. What about you, Stephen? Are you going to be doing any streaming for us in the future?
No, I still have that exam.
That's right.
We'll circle back on it in the summer.
Okay, all right. So for the time being, Shawn and I will be doing the bulk of the streaming for this ridiculous show here. Come join for the bad jokes, and hopefully some bad stories at the same time. But
no, it's all the puns, man. That's how we really captured our audience.
We actually escaped this entire episode of making a single bad pun. So high fives to all you guys. High fives.
Just wait, you'll hear it.
We've clearly adapted.
Yes. But you can't. What? No.
It's still good. It's still good. I'm closing out on that.
All right. We're done.
Yeah, we'll see y'all next time. Let's do it again.
Thanks for watching, everybody.